Hello, I'm Taran Matharu, and I'm the author of the Summoner series. For those of you who aren't familiar with my story and are joining just out of curiosity, I started writing my book on Wattpad about 2 years ago, and I uploaded my book to Wattpad, and it went viral, and it ended up getting over 6.5 million reads. And when it met the million read mark, I was contacted by a reporter, and the day after the article that the reporter wrote came out, an audiobook publisher got in touch and offered to buy the audiobook rights to my book. I then got in touch with a bunch of agents to ask for some advice. All of the agents that I contacted offered representation, so I had 6 to choose from, and eventually my agent Juliet got me publishing deals all over the world. So what I'm going to do now is to just tell you guys a little bit about where I write, what my writing experience is like, and maybe give you guys some tips. So here we go. So this is my office. It's a little bit small, but I really like how cozy it is, to be honest. This here is a model of Ignatius, the main demon in my book. My mother actually made it as a fun art project. I think it's pretty good. This here is a mood light that also does like it steams my room. So if you look closely, you'll see that there is some steam coming out of there, and that keeps the room not being too dry. So this is my bookshelf. You can see it's quite full here, and this is my desk where I do most of my writing. So I thought what would be cool would be to show you guys some of the things that I have in my office, which will tell you a little bit about my my publishing story and how I write. And also here is my garden. It's actually not a bad view. Yeah. So this is my whiteboard. So my desk comes with a whiteboard. So sometimes I'll sketch out what I get up to on there using these pens. This is the top of my desk. I keep some of my favorite books up there. You'll see here some 3D models of Ignatius I had designed, and I 3D printed them. I think that's pretty cool. And I did a giveaway of these for the pre-order campaign for my book. It was really hard to give them away, actually, because I just love them so much. There's even these really, really mini ones. Don't know if you can see. Yeah, so you get really small ones as well. I also had these toys made. So this is Solomon, for those who have read the book. It's a little crochet doll of Solomon. I'll be doing a giveaway of these at some point. I think he's pretty cool. I've got a couple of them. There's just 2 of them, and there's Ignatius. He was also a giveaway for the pre-order campaign, and I love him. He's awesome. So here are some of my favorite books. I love Darren Shan. Got all his stuff there. And Brian Jacks, he was also a favorite of mine when I was younger. So I thought what might be cool would be to show you all the different editions of my book that I just happen to have in my office. And you'll see that they will look a little bit different. For people asking questions, I will be doing a little Q&A session at the end. So this is the UK edition. It's slightly bigger than the American edition, which you can see here. But you'll see that they're pretty similar, just a little bit smaller, different font. There's no gun on the American one as well. And here is the Australian, New Zealand, South African edition, and that is paperback. So that's hardback, that's paperback. And you'll see that has a blue font. So yeah, it's kind of interesting to see how different publishers, they decide on using different formats to publish books. Here is a pile of my books. My mum very kindly bought all of these to give to some of her friends, so I'm supposed to be signing them, and I haven't yet. Let's see, what else? So this is pretty cool. This is a very cool little pendant bookmark that was sent to me by a fan called Jason, which is pretty awesome. So it's got, you know, a mini kind of summoner book on the front. It's got some beads. It's got a tiny, I don't know if you can see it there, tiny little salamander, which is pretty cool, and the bookmark as well. Let's see, what else do I have to show you? Oh yeah, so this was given to me by my girlfriend. She made some really cool, like, kind of things to put in my office made out of the concept art. So this piece of concept art was made by Victor Toth, who and it's a little bit blurry, but it's of Captain Lovett and Lysander, and that's my mouse mat actually. Then there is also this. This piece was done by Małgorzata Gruska, who's one of my favorite artists. She designed the front cover of the book, and that's a coaster for me to put my water on. And there is also a clock with the front cover on, which I like. It's not working at the moment. I can change the battery. But I think that's all pretty cool. Let's see. I also have this book that I thought I'd show you. This was actually written by my agent, Juliet. And it's about writing young adult fiction. I haven't read it yet, but I thought that some of you might like to see it. It's a really good book to tell you about how to get started in young adult fiction. Let's see what else. This is one of my research books, the Mythical Creatures Bible. I used this to come up with some new demons for book 2 and book 3. You know, I actually, when I bought this, there were a lot of them that I already knew. I think I only got 2 new demons out of this book, but it was a really good read nonetheless. And I also have a friend of mine's book. He's also on Wattpad, for those of you who started reading my stuff on Wattpad. His name's Jason. This is his book, VOK. If you're on Wattpad and you like science fiction and action, then might be good fun for you guys to read. Let's see. I think that's... Oh yeah, so let me give you a little tour of kind of the business side of my kind of writing career. So these are my business cards. So it's got my front cover on the front, and it's got all my info on the back. You know, so that's pretty handy to give out when I'm at author events. I also have a bunch of newspaper clippings. So this is when the novice was in the Sunday Times. My Wattpad username is Taran Matharu 1. And then this is the other. This was in the Evening Standard. So I still got a copy of that as well. There you go. And that was pretty cool. And there's a bunch of other clippings as well that I won't show you. Then there's also the business side of things. So these are all my contracts with the different publishers. So there's actually quite a lot of administration involved when you're dealing with you know, when you're getting published. And also here is all the tax stuff that you need to deal with, which is also a bit of a pain. Well, actually the publishing contracts is pretty simple. My agent Juliet sorts most of that out. But yeah, dealing with the taxes is no fun. Let's see. I think that's pretty much everything. So I guess if anyone has any questions, there we are. So if anyone has any questions about publishing, about book 2, feel free to let you know, chuck some questions up, and I'm happy to answer them. Let's see what else. And yeah, I guess I can give you guys some sneak peeks into book 2. So what apps do I write on? Okay, that's a question. So Scrivener. I don't know if any of you have heard of Scrivener, but it's worth looking up. It's a great app for writing on, where it allows you to separate everything into chapters, and you can navigate really easily. And it also allows you to do like memory boards and like clip things together to look at stuff. That's really fun. And that's the app that I use for writing. Ooh, sorry, that's a bit awful. And obviously I use Wattpad as well. I like to upload stuff on Wattpad. Um, that's how I started out. How do you get your stories noticed on Wattpad? That is a difficult question. I've actually answered that. If you go on my profile, you'll see there's a story called "How to Get to Number One on Wattpad." Does it cost money? Anyway, so I'll answer the question first. So if you go on there, you'll see all my tips and tricks on how to, get people to see your work, things like that. It's definitely something that you should check out if you're looking into taking Wattpad seriously and trying to build a following on there. It's got literally everything I know about doing well on Wattpad in there. Um, what was the question? Does it cost money? Do you mean Wattpad or to get published? It costs you no money. Um, if any money is ever flowing away from you to someone else, then it's not a proper publisher. So sometimes a publisher will get in touch with you and say, hey, if you pay us like £500 or $500 or whatever, then we'll send you 100 copies of the book. Oh, the app that I use. Um, the app that I use, the Scrivener app, it costs about I think $20. Um, yeah, it's about $20, so it is expensive. I mean, Microsoft Word is just as good. It's only when you have like this massive novel. Um, uh, I'm sorry, these questions are coming too quickly. So if you have a massive novel and you need to navigate between chapters, scrolling up and down can be really tricky with Word. So starting out, Word is fine, but later on it can be a bit trickier. Um, so Ryan, who I've spoken to before, he just asked me how my book tour was. So what I did, it was not a book tour. It was a tour of the US for me to look around, to kind of explore. I'd never been to the US before, except for once when I was really, really little in Miami. So it was great because I got to meet my publishers. I sat down with the entire publishing team, none of whom I'd met before. I got to meet my US editor, Liz Sabler, and that was awesome. And I got to talk to them about, what's coming up in book two, some ideas for how to get the word out about the book. And that was really fun. And yeah, I got to explore. I went across 22 states, and every time I found a Barnes and Noble nearby, I went in and I signed a copy. So there's about 150, maybe 130 signed copies of the book all across the US. So if you go into a Barnes and Noble and you see a signed one, it means that I've been there personally and signed it like literally right there. So if you happen to see one, that's what happened. Um, yeah, what was the other question? Someone had another question. Um, is Juliet Marchins as funny in real life as she is on Twitter? Yes, she is. Yeah, she's great fun. She's really laid back, but she's tough when she needs to be. And I think the great thing about Juliet is she's not a short-term agent. There's some agents where they want to get, and I'm not saying all agents are like this, but sometimes you get an agent who that it's all about that deal. This is your book. They want to get the best book, the best deal for that book. But the great thing about Juliet is for her, even if it means more money in the short term, she's really looking, she'd rather turn that down and if she's looking at your long term interests. And I think that's what you should look for in an agent, is an agent who can get you a great deal, but is also wants to build you up as an author. How many copies do I have? Oh yeah, how many copies of the first draft do I have? I tend to keep around. Um, I mean, on my laptop, every single time I send off a version to the editor, I save it. Well, I have two editors, one in the US and one in the UK. But when I send that off, I'll save that version just in case, and I'll keep it in Dropbox. So if my laptop gets lost or stolen, I haven't lost everything. But the publishers, they also keep records. It's not great to rely on. I also have a massive slab of A4 paper with the first kind of the copy. It was before I kind of the final draft of the book that had been sent to me. Anything for new writers? Do you mean advice? Advice to new writers. I guess my main advice for new writers is to when you're reading a book, actually analyze what you're reading. That's the best way to learn how to write 100%. So you look at it and you're like, okay, I love this character. I love this story. I love how the world has been built. But the problem is you might not, you don't know how to do that. So you need to look, how did they do that? How did they transition from scene to scene? What's the structure of this book? It starts out here, then it moves here. How's time passing? How's a year pass from the start of this book to the finish? If I, it can be tricky to make those time jumps fluidly. And that's something that's very important. So that's my top piece of advice for and also reading's fun. So it's great to be able to read and learn how to write at the same time. I think that's probably the best and funnest way of learning how to write. Yeah. Does anyone have any questions about book two and what's happening in book the Novice's sequel, which we don't have a name for yet, by the way. So we're just calling it book two for now. But hopefully, so I've already sent the first draft in, and I sent it off to my two editors, my US editor Liz and my UK editor Naomi, and I haven't received it back yet, but we're going to come up with a name together. But does anyone have any questions about book two? I posted on Summoner Reddit a list of interesting mythological creatures. Are they going to show up in book two? So there are several demons that are going to appear in book two, almost twice as many as there were in book one. So there's going to be, if in book one I think there were like 12 demons. In book two there's going to be like maybe 30 demons. It's a lot of demons. And I can tell you some of them if you like. So there's going to be the Raiju. The Raiju is it might sound similar to Raichu, which is Pikachu's kind of evolved form in Pokemon. And Raichu's name is actually taken from Raiju, which is a real Japanese mythological creature. And the Raiju is it's like a weasel. It looks a little bit like a weasel mixed with a raccoon, mixed with a mongoose, and it has blue fur, and it has lightning powers, so it's able to shock people with a lightning bolt, kind of like Pikachu, I guess. So that's going to be one of the main demons, and that's going to belong to a dwarf girl whose name is Cress Fraser, and she's a dwarf girl who doesn't like to wear her veil, and that creates a bit of tension between her and dwarves. But she's very brave, and she becomes very close to Fletcher, Silver, and Othello. Are there any more questions before I log out? I'm happy to keep going until you guys run out. Just give you a couple more seconds. All right, I think that's all the questions. Thank you guys so much for tuning in and seeing my office. Oh, do we get to see more of the ether? Oh, someone's typing along one. Okay. Do we get to see more of the ether? Yes, we do. More so in book 3 than in book 2. But you definitely find out a bit more about how the ether works, what the different parts of the ether are like. You definitely learn a little bit about the orc part of the ether, because book 2 is set behind enemy lines in the jungles. Minor spoiler there. And there's going to be a lot more action, a lot more fighting. Fletcher's going to get to try use his sword a lot more, and his bow and arrow. So that's going to be really cool. Do we get to see different parts of the world in book 2? Yes. Yes, you do. You get to see a lot more. Book 1 was very much in Corsalum and Pelt, and a little bit around, at Vokans, obviously. In book 2, you also get to see the elven part of the world. You get to see what elves are like. You get to learn about elven culture. You get to see all the different. You get to see the elven great woods. It's going to be cool. Trust me. You get to see all the elf stuff. You also get to see what the orc lifestyle is like. You get to see how they exist, what weapons orcs use. You get to see them riding. You get to see cassowaries. You get to see orcs riding rhinos. Just some really cool orc stuff. And you also get to see the gremlins. The gremlins, you don't know too much about them. You've only heard them mentioned a little bit in book 1. But they become really important in book 2. Gremlins are like the orc slaves. They've been bred to be slaves. And they look a little bit like... what's the best way to describe them? They look like very small goblins. What you think of as a goblin is a very small gremlin. So that's going to be really interesting as well. And there's also a big pyramid in which the orcs have built. Yeah, Dobby. Some people have said that the concept art that I've put up with Dobby, but Dobby is based on a goblin anyway in appearance. So yeah, I guess they look a little bit like Dobby, but I didn't base them on Dobby. If you look up Gremlins and you type them in, Gremlins are a real thing. They're a real mythological creature that actually started in the First World War in the RAF, but they've kind of evolved since then. So someone asked me, there was a bunch of questions that I missed there, I'm sorry. What was the questions? Someone asked about, no, you've lost me. Someone asked a question earlier, I haven't answered it yet. If you could put that up again. Sorry. Does anyone remember what it is? Oh yeah, LGBT characters. So in the novice, LGBT characters, um, sexuality in the novice isn't really explored. There's not really that much romance. Sorry, not the novice, in book two. So there are characters who may or may not be LGBT, but sexuality isn't something that I try to explore too much in my work. So there is a little bit of romance. Yeah, someone asked about. Sorry, I'll try and remember that one as well. But yeah, so LGBT characters, not so much, but it's there could be. There's one or two characters that in my head are LGBT, but it's not really discussed because I don't want to I don't want to explore kind of romance too heavily in book two and book three. But it's touched upon, but it's not a big theme in the. It's not it's not like Twilight or the Hunger Games with the kind of romantic element. It's just not in there, and that's just personal preference for me. There is romance, but it's not too intense. So characters on myself. Fletcher is based on my younger self. When I was younger, I was very much against injustice. I hated it when people were really, they were unfair. They treated people badly. I experienced a lot of racism when I was a kid. So Othello is partly inspired by how I dealt with racism and how I felt about racism. Silver is very much, she is a kind of mix of the different traits that I find that I don't see necessarily so much in myself, but there's definitely a sense of duty to Silver that is inspired partly by my sense of duty to my family and my kind of career path as well. So that's definitely an element of Silver there. Let me see what else. What other questions were there? Oh yeah, the inspiration for demons. So for this next kind of part of the series, I have based almost quite a few of the demons on real mythological creatures that exist around the world. So there is the Nanoware. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right actually, but it's kind of like a land shark. It's like a shark with four legs, moves really fast, really dangerous. There's the what else is there? There's the Caladrius. That's based on a Greek mythological bird that has healing powers. There's a whole bunch of them. I can't give too many of them away because we'll be talking about them as book two comes up. But they've definitely been inspired. I'm also going to be creating some of my own demons. So there's like the sprites, for example, although I haven't. Yeah, that's right. Only the most pro. But yeah, so I can't give too many of them away. But there's the sprites, for example, which is one that I made up myself, which is kind of like a dragonfly with a stinger, and it's massive. It's bigger than a mite. So yeah. Yeah, I think that's all the questions that everyone asked. I'm gonna give you guys like another 15, 20 seconds to ask any more, and then I'll log off. I'll let you guys go because it's been, don't know how long it's been, but it's been a while. All right. Well, I just want to thank you guys so much for tuning in, seeing where I write, what my office is like, asking me these questions, being interested in my books. Um, you're very welcome, Caitlin. No problem. I also want to thank Wattpad for helping me set this up and for promoting this as well. I really do appreciate it. And I guess that's it. How do I stop this broadcast? Oh yeah. So thank you all so much. And if you have any more questions, feel free to just tweet them at me on Twitter. I always respond to any questions that are written on my wall, or written on Twitter, or written on my Facebook page. I can't reply to all my comments now because there's just so many and it's tough to manage. But if you have any more questions, just let me know. All right. Bye guys. Thanks a lot.